Witam Julię i Johna.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
I love when John started. He said, nazywam się Johnem Scottem. And he's making a joke because actually when we get married and John, he a bit trying to learn Polish. I mean, he's talking a little and he's trying very to get it, but it's not an easy language to learn.
Yeah.
And when we got married, and the gentleman said, I ty, Julia, czy weźmiesz, czy jak to się mówi?
Bierzesz.
W każdym razie fraza była z Johnem Scottem. I John tak na mnie, I'm not Johnem Scottem, I'm John Scott.
So John, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, about your yoga practice, and maybe how your yoga journey began?
Natalia, we're talking about several lives here. I am born in New Zealand with Scottish parents, so I'm first generation Kiwi. However, I feel like I'm a citizen of the world because I like to travel the world. I feel free. My personal nature is to be like John or Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I'm a free-spirited being that's enjoying this life and trying to inquire into what is this life and why is this life. And so I've never really fitted into the system. As a small boy at school, I was in the slow learning group because I was dyslexic, but mainly because I would stare out the window. I would daydream a lot. And on reflection, we learn so much in hindsight. That daydreaming was in fact an early stage of meditation as a young child. That what I found in my own internal inquiry was far more riveting or exciting than what was happening in the so-called real world or the immediate surrounding. That our perception on this reality is such a narrow band that there's much more to it. And I think as a young child I'd tapped into that, but the system shuts that down. My creative ability was not totally shut down, and I went through to be an industrial designer. Prior to that, I was very much a sports person. And so throughout my professional life, I've been always playing a sport or actively being physical.
You were a golfer.
I was a golfer. I guess that's one of my...
You were a windsurfer.
A windsurfer. They're all meditations of a different sort. And we can get to that a little bit later. There's no two meditations are the same. Even the same meditation done the next day is never the same. So at a real inquiring age, about 28 years of age, I decided to really travel. And that's when I came across yoga in Greece.
Okay.
And so my first teacher was a British guy called Derek Island. And he was my Shiva, or he was my Tarzan, or he was my action figure. So if I go back to being a child, Peter Pan, Robin Hood, Superman, they were all sort of superheroes. And so when I met Derek, he became my manifestation in the physical realm of a superhero, and I wanted to be like that. Whatever it was that he was expressing. And so what he was expressing was an undercurrent of yoga. It was a very physical, dynamic practice, and I wanted to do that, but the hook was something deeper.
Okay, so that was your first experience, your first connection with yoga?
Yes, I was working as a domestic staff in a retreat center, one of the original holistic health and fitness centers way back in the 80s.
Okay.
And I met the teaching staff, and I had the realization there that I was on the wrong side of the fence. Instead of being the domestic staff, I wanted to be on the teaching side. I didn't have qualifications to be the windsurfing teacher. I didn't have qualifications to be the Tai Chi teacher. But when I
but
met
you
Derek,
wanted to.
I wanted to be.
Very interesting because John met a Tai Chi teacher and John said, I want to learn that. And then the Tai Chi teacher said, you wait till Derek come. So probably, there are big teachers who already feel where your direction is, and he already felt that John's direction going to be a connection with Derek, and they really looked like two brothers. If you look at the photos, John looked like a bit of a younger brother, but they both look like Tarzans.
Okay, I want to see the photo.
Yeah.
So I think indirectly, I realized at an early age I was a teacher, but I didn't know what I was going to teach.
So you felt the calling from...
Yeah, to share.
Sure.
And then the question is, what is it that I was sharing or wanting to share? And I think it's that ability to stay playful in life, to stay young in life, but to stay in the full inquiry about what is this life. And so at no time in my life have I been ordinary in the sense of just being normal. So what I want to share with people is that we can get caught in normalcy, in a system of what is forced on us to be normal. And so I want to be able to open doors and windows for people to be able to experience their own inner freedom, their own inner joy, to find what their inquiry and what they want to share.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. And Julia, when was your first moment that you felt like yoga is something that you would like to follow, or is something that makes you feel in a certain way? Like
I came to Poland when I was 17. I came from Kazakhstan, and it kind of, when I came to Poland from the very beginning, it was a very transformative experience because I was alone. I didn't have parents, and I love my parents, but no one told me what to do. And this experience was a bit overwhelming from one side, but from another side I thought, now I can really understand who am I. And one of the things I started to do right away is the yoga classes. And my first teacher, a great teacher, Eva Wardzała, she's teaching Iyengara yoga, and I met her, and I felt a connection with yoga from the very beginning. But I had that feeling that I would love to teach, and I was very shy. And I thought, oh, I'm too stiff. So I actually had my misconception of who you need to be to teach. And from perspective of being me now, I think the person who can transform him, herself, can be a teacher. It's no matter if you're stiff, if you're flexible. It's actually good when you're a bit stiff, because then you understand the struggle of the students. Because if you're flexible, you don't really, I mean, if you're intuitive and if you have empathy, you will know what they're going through. But if you're stiff, you understand really what they're struggling and the pain they're going through. Yeah, so that was my first experience when I was 18, and I was doing Iyengara yoga gradually, but then I was doing a theater school in Krakow, and I didn't have time for anything in my life. And then I came back to this experience after moving to Warsaw, and I started to go to Iyengara yoga, and then somehow I went to a Stenger class, and it was Eva Jaro's class in Warsaw, and it was already a primary, in that moment they said lead primary. We don't use actually that expression, we said it's counted. And I came to that class, and Eva said it's a bit too much for the beginner. I said, I'm gonna try. So of course I couldn't do many things, but I had total fun. And I said, this is something I love. I didn't know that in that moment that I'm going to teach it. but sometimes the path actually chooses you. So this is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I had similar experience with this. And how you two met, and where's the yoga in between? Because yoga was connected you together, right? Am I right, or?
Yeah. So maybe both of us gonna have a different experience because we didn't know one another.
You can like.
Everyone's experience is different.
Of course.
So for me, it was excited. I just came from Peru, and I really wanted to go to John's retreat, but I didn't have the money, honestly, at that moment, because I spent all my money there. So I remember, but I said, but I can afford to go to theory class. And I was doing my nails. I exactly remember that moment, and I said, should I go, should I stay? And then I thought, I'm gonna go. I wanna know who is Johnem Scott. And I entered the Ashtanga yoga studio, and John came in the first 10 seconds to me, and he was quite direct and quite strict. And he said, who are you? Why are you here on the third day? I haven't seen you. And why are you in jeans? And I was a bit in shock with all of that.
What did you answer?
It was the third day, the 5th class. And so by day 2 or day 3, I know all of the students' names.
Yeah.
It's one of my things. It's a personal connection.
Absolutely.
And so I make sure I even write the names down, or I write them on the mats, or I put a label. And so Julia wasn't the only person that arrived on that evening class. There was another man. And so I go up and I shake hands. And so I make them welcome. So I welcome the new people. So for Julia, arriving on that first class was my 5th class. So it was obvious that she was new. So I went straight up to her, and they were green jeans. So not just blue jeans, they were green jeans. And she happened to come to a class that was not just a lecture or theory. My theory classes are sometimes explorative and practical. And my design background means I like to work out how things work. And so we've got a yoga practice, and for me I go, well, what comes before the yoga practice? So it's what did the yogis, how did they learn their practice? And an aspect of that is watching babies, our body grow and develop into physical movement. So if you wanted to know what this is, you go back and you see the baby. So I've had 2 children, and I've watched my children go through their physical development and saw sequences. And then realised that those sequences were the same whether you're a Chinese baby, a Polish baby, a New Zealand baby, or an English baby.
Okay.
And so I've put together a little, what I call a baby sequence, and it requires crawling around on the floor quite a bit. And so Julia was so enthusiastic on that class that we were like 2 babies on the floor together. And
I was in these jeans, you know, and everyone wearing leggings. And I just thought it's a theory class.
My very good friend and who manages my website, or our website, he was also there because he was assisting me on the classes. And he saw Julia too, and noticed that not only was she wearing green jeans, she had a jug of beer. What looked like beer. It was kombucha.
Okay.
So because I'm a person who lives life through inquiry, of course, green jeans, beer, crawling on the floor willingly with big smile was like, who is this person?
Yeah.
So at the end of the week, Julia actually had a leaving party. But at that point, we were able to then, once the work was done, make a connection.
Yeah. John was very professional, and he kind of gave me a little signs of the attention, but I couldn't really understand if there's signs of the attention or he just liked me as a person or just a student. I was completely I was disoriented, but you know, sometimes even think, it's a very actually good topic, because I was thinking, I can't fall in love, he's a teacher, it's just inspiration, I can't mix these things. But when your body is actually starting to be much smarter than you and showing that it's not inspiration, it's something more, you just have to listen to that. So at some point I said, okay, no, I just have to admit what I feel, and that's all. And then at the end of the week, John really kind of came and in front of my face, he's a real Scotsman, he just admitted that there's something going on and we have to talk about that. And that was relieving, because I thought it's not my illusion, it's really happening. Yeah, so that was
That's
our
beautiful.
meeting.
So that was the beginning of your journey, your yoga journey together, right? Because now
and
you're
I think that the interesting too, Natalia, is the fact that we might have age difference, but in a state of yoga or in a state of inquiry. What's special about inquiry, if I go back to the term of daydreaming, when you go into a daydream or into a focus, you're in a timeless place. So the construct of time doesn't exist. So we met in a timeless place on a yoga workshop. If you are participating in that realm, you're transcending the normal, ordinary, mundane world. And so what we connected on was a deeper level than a superficial level. And so that's what's been the real bonding and attraction, is that we've actually two souls that are really wanting to travel in the inquiry of life together. And so in the 4 years that we've been together, we've traveled nearly most of the world, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, all on yoga adventures.
Yeah, it was also always a good
Beautiful.
exam, because when you travel a lot, you actually starting to know each other a lot, because you see each other when you're really tired, when there's something going on and you forgot something, and it's
Cancelled
and
flights.
cancelled flight, and we really had good exams in terms of life, and yoga definitely served us very well in that, and we could see what is still what we need still to work on, what is done. It is a great journey. You need to find, like, John started his journey with Derek, and he found an inspiration. So yoga is not you don't have to really have the guru, but you need to have someone on that path who you trust, and you see how you can develop and what is coming from that journey. So I think it's important to find inspiration.
A good word is mentor.
Mentor is a good word, yeah. A teacher or mentor who will not only believe in himself, but really will believe in you. Because it's not only about the practice, physical practice. It's about connection. And if the teacher, mentor, can make a connection with you, then it shows that you can go through that, and you can have a trust that you're not alone on that journey. And in some point you can let go, you have your own wings, and you can fly. But in the beginning, you need to start walk, and someone have to hold your hand. Really, in that moment.
Yes, if you have self-motivation and self-inspiration, you can learn anything. You can do anything by yourself. But you'll probably make many mistakes. And if you make, as Julia says, if you can make a connection to a teacher or a mentor, then the journey is going to be easier in terms of some of the pitfalls. The yoga practice, however, is a solo journey. But as Julia's pointing out, all we have in this world is relationship. And so the yoga journey is to find that connection to yourself, but in some cases you need to be doing it for somebody else to set that commitment and that discipline.
Exactly. And more in that world, people just need to have a commitment so they could really learn the discipline.
And so the advice is to find a good mentor, a good teacher, or a friend who is practicing that could be a friend mentor. So you can start with someone. But the understanding is that every journey, that's a classic saying, starts with the first step, not to look at the syllabus. If you ever look at the syllabus or the end product, then it's always daunting. So for me to learn Polish, if I think of the whole Polish vocabulary, forget it. I've got to start with the fundamentals. I've got to learn how to say hello. And so with the yoga, you have to learn how to say hello. And that's meeting yourself on the mat and making the first breath movement.
Yeah, and to find a teacher who won't be judgmental, who won't be egotic, who will really believe in you, who will help you in the hard moments, no matter if you're stiff or you have a problem. Someone who you will learn really how to relate to others, because this relationship will teach you how to do things in your own life. This is what I think. This is what I learned from John, actually. When John started to teach me, I felt that I could do so many things because I didn't have to think that I'm too stiff. Yeah, he didn't judge me. He didn't judge me for my stiffness. He was sometimes funny. So he was, for example, when we already were a couple, he was touching my calves or my thighs, and he said, "Running, this is running." And then he started to run with me. Yeah.
One of my biggest realizations in yoga, I do that, was actually running with Julia on the beach. So it's really interesting what Julia's introduced here. At the beginning of our relationship, I was a little bit fixed as a teacher that yoga supports everything, but nothing else in this life supports yoga. So that's how I was. Now I'm realizing that the running supports the yoga if it's managed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was during a running
Meditation
session with Julia, I won't say the word meditation yet, because Julia had previously said, "But John, when I'm running, I get into a really good space and focus. And it's like a meditation. I see the world going by as an observer." When I ran with Julia, it was more about the effort of running and the achievement of running, the speed, the distance, the no cramping, blah, 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 blah. And look at me running with my wife. And so it was very much an ego-based thing, where on the yoga mat, my ego was in a different place.
Okay.
But on the run, this particular day, got into a meditative state. And there was quite a few revelations while I was running with Julia. And so this is the other thing for all beginners to realize too, is that the yoga itself is just the vehicle. The asana, the postures are just the vehicle to meet yourself, to meet the challenge. And so everything in life is a challenge, and you cannot take it head on. You have to take it a little bit at a time. And so to get the conditions prepared for you, a mentor, teacher that's going to guide you on your way, but then you have to put in the time yourself. And so you want to be able to find then the space in your day to be able to give that space and time and devotion to you meeting yourself and your challenge.
This is what John is pointing very wisely. I think that it doesn't mean that the teacher for everyday practice. You can have a teacher when you come for the workshop, you get the knowledge, you come back and you go for that yourself. Because I think when we're always in the shala and we don't have the space, when we just with our own selves, we become lazy. Because we got used so much to an observer, a teacher, and someone who's holding a space, that we don't really know how would it be to do it just by our own selves.
So we are kind of, I'm sorry for interrupting you, kind of getting ourselves into a comfort zone when we feel safe, as you mentioned in this shala. And
safe is good, but we need to also understand who we are without the teacher, because they are challenging themselves every day. So they understand that there's not much really can happen with myself. Not much can harm me. And even if we live in a society of threat, it's just an illusion. And we need to find our own freedom in that. That's why I'm saying that I really wish everyone to have their discipline, because it keeps your connection with your own self and you keep yourself out of the fear factor. And yes, I say it's no matter if it's meditation, or if it's yoga, or it's some kind of a sport practice that keeps you track, but it has to have a focus, because if you don't have a focus, if you are not in a meditative state, it won't happen. So you really need to be focused. For us, Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga is perfect way of the meditation because it's dynamic. So you connect it with your body, you connect it with your breath, you connect it with your mind and with your thoughts, and you actually can see what's happening in your mind and in your heart while you practice. And so you can see, observe, and maybe sometimes redirect it too.
I agree. And do you have tips for someone who struggles with self-discipline? Because for me, self-discipline is something that I know is very important, and I also trying to discipline myself to meditate every day. But there are some triggers that you're losing your focus. There's something. So do you have any tips from your own experience, from your own life, to tell someone?
Well, one of the things about self-discipline is that to do anything for ourselves or to help ourselves or heal ourselves is the most difficult thing. And that's the main thing that we need to be able to learn. But it's much easier to help somebody else. So for me, I do my yoga practice for myself, but not for myself only. I do my practice so that I can help others. And so that's what motivates me to get up in the morning to practice, is that I'm not doing it just for myself, I'm doing it for somebody else.
Okay.
So you can extend that to also having a practice partner. So when you then have a practice partner, you have a commitment that you are accountable to. You know, let's meet at 8, let's meet at 6:30, whatever time. So, and also when we then do retreats and workshops, we have a teaching team. So we have then a bigger group. We might have 4 of us in the group that are committed to practicing together, so that we can then teach our student group. So there again, we're working for ourselves to be able to work for others. So if you do your practice for somebody else, then it's selfless motivation.
Okay. And do you actually practice together?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
We do, and because now John had a surgery, had a very hard surgery on the eye, so he can't do a physical practice, but he's doing the visual meditation. So we put 2 mats, and I'm doing my moving asana practice, and John is doing his practice in his mind. And he's doing it for more than 2 months, and he's doing amazing. And he has his inquiry, he always has something to write down. So we were doing the Surya Namaskar B, and then we went to the warrior, and John said, I love the warrior. It's just so grounding. And then today I was practicing and I said, God, John had the realization actually in his mind. So what's happening that he feel that he really doing it, even his body is still. And the mind can't really know if it's really happening or John just imagine it to himself. So it just merges, and he's really doing this practice. And even physically, his body is still toned and strong. So this is quite an unbelievable experience.
A number of things here. We're talking inquiry, we're talking meditation, we're talking exercise. The yoga asana is very much an exercise. If you just do an exercise, you will be physically healthy. You might even be a little bit more mentally healthy. But it's more than a physical exercise. When we turn it into an inquiry, what am I doing? That changes it into a concentration on what you're doing. What is the exercise I'm doing, and how am I working in this exercise? And when that inquiry goes to a deeper level, the concentration gets deeper, and therefore then it becomes a meditation. Now the meditation is, in my case, the method of vinyasa is I count every breath movements. So we count in Sanskrit, so it's like a mantra. So I'm continuing to count all the time. Now I've been practicing for over 30 years. At the beginning it starts off like an exercise because you are very much on the physical and what it looks like from the outside. But because I've had this retina detachment and surgery, it's really given me the real opportunity to really look at the insight that I've been having over those 30 years of practice, that it's an inner inquiry, and therefore it becomes a meditation. And so what Julia is sharing is that I'm able to sit and do the physical practice. I can see it because I'm choreographing it. And it's the choreographing, the counting of it in Sanskrit like a mantra that keeps me tied in on that concentration point for an hour and a half, sitting, just concentrating. And so I've been calling it virtual visualization. So I've been transcendental virtual visualization. So transcendental is when you transcend the ordinary thinking mind. The ordinary thinking mind is where we're in our programmed life, our habit life, which most of us are in, I would say, 96% of the day. And some of us might, for 3% of the day, be actually concentrating on our exercise or our discipline. 1% of us might actually be in complete flow with what is all the time. So the yoga exercise practice is a practice for life, so that you're able to meet all of the things that come into your life and accept them, understand them, and flow with them, not be in reaction. So yoga is about learning to be in a state of response, a response to what is. And so I'm in a response to what is in terms of surgery. So I just want to say that as a beginner, you might be learning and progressing daily, but there will be a point where this becomes the content of your practice, and then you'll start to realize that each day really is about recovery. You're recovering from an injury, recovering from an operation, recovering from a relationship argument, recovering from COVID-19, recovering from losing our job. So we're when we're ever on the mat, what we're doing is reclaiming our own security, safety, and the surrender to how special we are in ourselves, so that we're able to respond to the situation and not be in reaction. So 96% of the population are in reaction and therefore in suffering. And those 3% of the population, they're in a different place. They have a mindset. And so there is a new mindset that's starting to shift the consciousness. And that's what the attraction is for the 96% others, because they see that the system's all against them. And then they can see that there are other people that are able to achieve. And so what it is that motivation comes from seeing someone else. Self-discipline is by someone mentoring you, giving you a set thing to do, you then doing that practice. So it's a very progressional thing, and nothing ever stays the same. You're going to change and change and change. Even your body changes. The whole cellular makeup of the body's changing all the time anyway. So there is an essence that is the same all the way through. What is that? It's the same John for 60-something years. There's something that's the same, but the body's not the same. the actions aren't the same.
The thoughts are not the same.
The thoughts are not the same. The pleasures are not the same. But there's something that's been a continuum all the way through. And that's what I'm really connecting to and wanting to share with other people. That it's really magic. So that then you realize that when you're in response rather than to reaction, you start to realize how exciting this is.
And it's not to put, 96% on like opposite, but we need the discipline, and as a people we need to hold on to something, and I think more and more we understand that the system of the education and our living in the system is not perfect, and we need to learn to breathe. We need to learn to focus. We need to learn to work with our body, and if we have it, then we can really sustain ourselves. Then we can really start to think for ourselves. And this is a question: what is wrong in the system? Why there is no such a knowledge? Why it's not given to the children from the very beginning? If we already know that we need it.
How important the breath is in the practice of yoga?
The breath is the bridge between the physical world and the spirit world. To be a little bit more specific, the physical body is moved by the breath. Okay? The physical body is moved by the breath, and the question is, what moves the breath? That's the mind or the thoughts that move the breath, that moves the body. And then the question is, well, what moves all the thoughts? Where do all the thoughts come from? And so to go into that inquiry, we have to start somewhere. So if we start with the body, it's going to ask you to breathe. But you can do many things in the gym and not be aware of the breath. So in the yoga practice, we do go in from the breath to move the body, rather than going into the gym, moving the body to move the breath. So the breath is the bridge. It's the bridge between the physical body and the mental body. So the breath's the energy body. So we've got a physical body, an energy body, a mental body, and then a wisdom body, and then a bliss body. So we want to live intelligently in this beautiful natural world. So we have to somehow get through the filter of this mental body. And at the moment, the mental body, that 96% or 95% of your time is just running on programs. And those programs are reactions, memories, associations, assumptions, and projections. If you take those out and ask, who am I? Then you're in a different place. You're in that part of the brain that we don't usually use. And so we're wanting to access that. And so the breath is the key. The breath's like the oil to the machine. It runs smoothly. When you find that your senses bring in too much input, the particular part of the ordinary thinking mind gets too full, and you won't even know that you're breathing. You're short of breath. And the moment that you start to focus in on the breath, what ends up happening is, Julia calls it noise. All of the stuff that we have going on in our head is just noise. And the one way to put a silence to that noise is Julia just did then. She did a big exhale and a big inhale. The moment you start listening to the sound of your breath, we call it ujjayi. Free breathing ujjayi. Ujjayi is the victorious breath. It's the one that is the tool. If you put mantra on top of the breath and mantra is the one that saves your mind from itself. So the intelligence is saved from the ordinary thinking mind through mantra and breath. All of those doubts, oppositions, the duality of this physical realm.
Like, not like.
Yeah, all of those problems dissolve into the central and becomes non-dual. So the breath is very key, very key.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
And I think one thing is important for the practitioners, that they really connect to their breath when they practice. Because I still see that many people not connecting to the breath, or they don't do a three-dimensional breath. They just survive. They also survive on a mat. But if you just put attention to a breath, what's happening with your breath? How can you change it? How you can make it fuller? This is the moment when transition, the transformation is happening. This is when you connect it with your own self. When you're not thinking the breath, but you just connect it with the breath. And I just wanted people to feel it.
So Julia mentioned a beautiful term, three-dimensional breath. And when some people just go in and out.
Definitely you're a teacher, so you can see also what's happening.
In and out, you can use it in your classes, is just two-dimensional breathing.
Can you quickly show how the three-dimension breathing looks?
Well, the three-dimensional breathing is, first of all, you've got length. That's an exhalation right down the length to the base of the spine, and then an inhalation, let's say up to the crown of the head. So there's your first dimension, is length. So there's a length in your breath. You have to focus to find that length. The second dimension is to breathe wide. So we can breathe first dimension length and width to the armpits, to the side ribs. So now we've got a two-dimensional plane, but we're actually a three-dimensional physical body in a three-dimensional realm. To arrive in the third dimension, we need to get the third dimension of the breath. And so we need to breathe into the sternum and the heart, the back of the heart. So then we've got length, first dimension, exhale. Inhale, width. Exhale, resolve back into the midline down to the root. Then inhale, length, width and depth. That extra little bit of inhalation and exhalation down is three-dimensional. Now the interesting thing is that we've got one dimension. That's people that don't even know that they're breathing. God, or the essence of energy, is keeping them alive. Two-dimensional breathing is, we're exercising and we're doing some good for the body. Three-dimensional is accessing that heart space. When you start to practice from the heart space, receive from the heart and relate from the heart, we're in the third dimension. When you're counting it, now when you're counting those breath movements, the number of breaths that you have, so when you're becoming accountable to that heart breath, time stops. This is the paradox of measuring. When you measure the third dimensional breath, you enter the fourth dimension, which is time. It becomes timeless. Now it's in that timeless place that past, future are no longer there. They've collapsed into the moment, into the present moment. So the three-dimensional breathing is the real yogic breath, is to be able to access, to be able to arrive in this beautiful temple, this physical body, to be in the space of your own body, to be comfortable in your own body, to be resourced in your own body. And we have to bridge it through the breath.
John, I want to ask you because previously you said that we all kind of need a mentor. Do you think like online place or online teacher or the connection through the online platform can be something that people also can use as a mentor?
Yes, I think so. I'm a little resistant to modern technology, being a designer before the computers. So I'm so used to doing things by hand. However, I have been on, as I said, 2 Zoom rooms, and if it's managed in a way that it still puts the student in the position where the student is learning to be independent, that the relationship with the mentor or the teacher is to check, because a teacher's a guide. The teacher's just guiding you and making sure you go in the right direction. And if they see you going the wrong way, they say, you're going the wrong way, you could still have a look there, but come back. But to be totally reliant that each class, each practice that you do is on the Zoom, I think that's too dependent.
Dependent, yeah. And this is also why we do an Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga, because this is a practice that gives you possibility to do it yourself, that you don't have to go to the class, that you actually have your sequence that you can repeat and you learn it again, and actually it's never become boring, because I know that people say, how can you do the same thing every time? But I'm doing the same thing, but I'm every day different. So I'm going to have different thoughts, I'm going to have different body, I'm going to have completely different problems, struggles and relations. And when you have one stable sequence, you feel safe in that. So you're actually starting to be very stable and safe in your practice. And you learn much more from yourself. But if you every day have something different and you take a bit of this, a bit of that, I mean, it's hard to find a discipline. And especially if you don't know the sequences, if you don't know the asanas, how you can make practice yourself. And this is also a thing that I remember myself when I started to practice at Ashtanga Yoga Studio in Warsaw before I met John. And the hardest thing for me to go to this self-practice class. And I thought that this is for very advanced people, but it's not. And this is the thing that I would like people to understand, the young yogis. It's not, you don't have to be advanced to go to self-practice class. You just have to take responsibility for yourself, to learn the asanas, to learn the names, to learn the count, so you will be responsible for yourself, for your practice, and you're not going to be led anywhere by anyone. And this is a beautiful freedom at last that you can have with your own self. But we're afraid of that so much, just that we're afraid to be alone in that. But we come alone and we die very often alone. So we actually need to face that moment of being with our own selves. And this is so beautiful when you actually understand who you are. And that we are not given this opportunity when we're in this consumption world. We wake up with a phone, we go to sleep with a phone, we watch the TV, we do things, and all of us we are in that matrix, and we are also these metrics. And we need to understand that we have to have a moment of getting out of that to really understand who we are and how we need to function in that matrix. So the system won't work against us, and we won't feel that me and my, and how can I that we will stop struggling in that system, that we actually start to say, okay, I can actually make the system to work for my own self, and I don't have to rely on that. And this is very interestingly, but this is what yoga actually teach you, to be responsible for yourself. It's not a religion, it's your tool. To be yourself, to be closer to yourself, to be closer to your spirit. No matter if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, whatever who you are, connect to your breath, connect to your body, and you will also connect and see what's going on in your head. And this is very beneficial. We need to see what's happening in our brain, in our mind, in our heart. And we don't give ourselves this opportunity. And you see so many people who are addicted of the phones because they actually can't turn it off, because they got used to that so much. It became a prolongation of our hand. So that discipline, unlearn that habits that are already so easily got to us. And I don't want to say that system is against us, but I can't say that system teach you really beneficial habits. And you need to see what's really working for you and what's not working for you. And this is
kind of filter.
Yeah.
So to directly answer the question about the online, the teacher is in this case an observer. In quantum physics, whether it's a wave or a particle depends on the observer. So as Julia pointed out earlier, to have an observer has an effect.
Always.
Always. So initially you need the observer to discipline you. You need the observer so that you perform for the observer. But I look at it this way when Julia talks about the matrix. There's the matrix and the matrix. There's the guru and the student. The guru's job is to show the student the guru inside. So my teacher introduced me to myself, inner teacher. So that's the role of the teacher, whether it's by Zoom or physical class. In the physical class, the teacher is really introducing the student to their own inner teacher. Let's now just change the word to observer. You're trying to learn to find your own observer. Mm-hmm. And I call this adhikara. Adhikara is to be the one who reclaims your own sovereignty. You have to have sovereign over yourself. You have to be the one that oversees yourself. So in terms of yoga terminology, Purusha, we reclaim our own Purusha, our own overseer or our own observer. Now the observer it's really interesting on the yoga journey is to then observe the ego. So here we have a teacher-student relationship, and the teacher's watching the ego, or the whole relationship now in contemporary yoga enhances the ego, where what we're really wanting to do is to say the ego doesn't need to go out for gratification. The ego doesn't need to go out to be seen. Mm-hmm. The ego goes out to get the directive from the teacher and the guidance from the teacher. That's what's the important role of the ego, is you take me to the people I need to go and see, and then I'm going to come back. You don't need to be out there for glorification. You don't need to be out there to be praised. The one that's going to praise you and the one that's going to love you is the one that's inside. So I learned this running with Julia, that my ego doesn't need to go out and say, look at me. I need to, from inside me, say, I love you.
Yeah, and this is totally different from what we see and experience in the outer world, that very often saying you just need to love yourself.
That's what
we hear that.
It's lacking love.
Yeah, but very often say
love.
We very often hear you need to love yourself. What does that mean, love yourself? It means gratify myself. And I think this is this trap that people are going through. They going through the work they hate. They're doing the things they hate, and then they say, "Okay, I got my money, and I'm now going to buy something." Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about my own self. I remember myself doing that. I was gratifying my own self for doing things I don't like. But then, when you're starting to learn more about yourself, you actually understand that you're doing something wrong with your life. If you're in this place that you're doing something that you don't like, and then you have to gratify yourself, you're like making yourself a monkey. You know, you're making a monkey from your own self. So you're more intelligent. You don't have to do things you don't like in your life. You have to learn yourself, who you really are. And in that sense, you need to understand that you're much more than you're a consumer, mm-hmm. that you're human. And what is to be human, and this is then it's such a great door. Then you start to actually if you start to question yourself who you are, the answers are coming into your life. They start to come, but first you need to be the one who's going to ask.
I agree.
Yeah, if you're afraid to do that, there's no one who's going to knock the door and going to answer that. But this is how actually universe works. That if you start to ask, the universe is answering you. But if you're afraid to do that, nothing will happen.
So when we talking about finding the love, for oneself. The beautiful mantra, my favorite mantra, it's not a direct translation from the Sanskrit. When you chant over many years, it takes on a meaning for you, what it means to you. And so this mantra answers 5 big questions in life. Where are you? Where have you come from? What are you? What are you doing? And where are you going? And so my answers to those questions, if we take a great big quantum leap, is that we are surrounded in love and light. That we have come from the infinite pure source of pure love and light. That we are one of the many individual representations of that pure, infinite, pure love and light. And what are we doing? We are being love and light in action. And where are we going? Returning on a journey to the pure source of pure love and light.
Okay, together.
Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamidaya Purnamevavashishyate. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hare Om.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.